Want to stop juggling spreadsheets, calendars, and a dozen apps just to run your rentals? Logify makes it easy. It's an all-in-one toolkit for hosts. Build a direct booking website, automate guest messaging, and keep all your channels in sync. Running your rental business your way has never been simpler. And for Good Morning Hospitality listeners, you can get 20% off any yearly plan with code GMH20. Just check the link in the show notes to get started today.
Welcome to Good Morning Hospitality, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the industry. From hotels and short-term rentals to all things travel and hospitality, you'll find each episode equips you with the information you need to start your week. Join us on Good Morning Hospitality every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts. Hello there, Sarah.
Hi, Leo. How's it going?
I'm very well, my friend. Nice to see you. Welcome back, audience, everybody at home, to the latest episode of Good Morning Hospitality Europe Crew. I'm Leo, and this is Sarah, the wonderful Sarah Dupree. How you been, buddy? For everyone at home, we had to record at a very specific time because Sarah has been seeing her new apartment. Very, very fun. Sarah, tell us, how is it?
Yeah, it's going well. Ish. I have a distinct feeling that maybe I've been had. So when if the saga continues, after I purchased the property, I knew I was going to do a reno, and so I was advised to get an architect in just to be sure that there was nothing structural, as I was going to be tearing out a couple of walls, and so that seemed reasonable. And so the architect came in and gave me a bunch of advice, like the fact that I need a license for certain things, and the fact that if I add a bathroom, it has to be wheelchair accessible in my 4th floor walk-up apartment. So some things that I figured didn't make a whole lot of sense, but it is Spain, so not too shocking that they would have rules that make absolutely no sense. So I paid the architect. I got a full revision of the plans. We applied for a license. I got my license. and then I asked a friend of mine who also has a couple of properties if he knew anybody who could help me with sort of the decorating and planning and choosing materials, because that is not my forte. And so put me in touch with a friend who's done several different projects throughout Barcelona, and I contacted her, and she came in and asked me if I was set on the distribution of the property that I had sort of laid out, the layout of the bathroom and where everything was going to go. And I said, well, sort of. We've submitted a license. And she looked a bit surprised. Turns out she is also an architect and told me I did not need an architect for anything I'm doing there. I also don't need a license because I'm not touching anything structural. It's just adding a bathroom. And that she has never had any inspection be turned down for not being wheelchair accessible on a 4th floor walk up, because the inspectors recognize that does not make any sense in a building without a lift. So I felt a little bit like I'd been had. I ended up getting 2 quotes from 2 different contractors from the first architect. And I was over there earlier this morning meeting with 2 new contractors from the new architect and designer. So I have to choose between them. Hopefully I'll have all the quotes next week and things will be moving along. But my purchase that I was hoping was going to go through in like June after I made the reservation deposit like in April. So things are moving a lot more slowly than I was hoping for in general. But the goal is hopefully it'll be on the market by end of the year. That's the goal. Fingers crossed. So
Let's keep an eye on where you get to, and if it is the end of the year. This is fun. Let's see how long this all takes with a bit of good old fashioned Spanish bureaucracy. I love the idea of the realtor and the architect sort of scamming people hand in hand, and then saying like, well, I wonder how much we can convince them that they need to do wheelchair accessibility for a walk up. No, go on, try it, see if we can get away with it. No, let's hope it's just somebody actually trying to be very diligent, but maybe slightly over diligent. Should we say that?
it is. I got curious the other day because I thought, like, come on, you can't choose a construction company that's been recommended by somebody that might have, tried to pull the wool over your eyes. And so I actually rang up the government, the local authorities, and asked them, and they said, "Oh yes, yes." So it turns out that is a rule, and I think there is a classic sort of Spanish bureaucracy loophole where legally, when you add a bathroom, you're supposed to have the measurements for handicap access. However, in practicality, when they send an inspector, they recognize that that does not make any sense. And so they usually just sign off on it, apparently, which is what I was told by the government when I rang up. So they know what's happening. It's very Spanish, the whole thing. It's ridiculous. I don't know how anybody gets
At least
anything
the
done
government
here.
now know. Yeah, you phoned the government. You
I
told
didn't give
them
any
your
names.
intentions,
I
and off
didn't
you
give
go.
any names. Just hypothetically, if I were to asking for a friend. Let's see.
I hope you called from a withheld number as well.
I did call from a friend's phone, actually. So yeah, I was not born
Smart.
yesterday. Shockingly.
Smart move. Lovely. Well, look, you've been busy. You never stop, do you? So you've come back from Uruguay, red wine and red meat for an entire 10 days. I was obviously on the croissant trail in France. I've got to ask, got to keep you honest. Are you back in the gym? Are you running? Butt class?
I
What's
am
going
back
on?
in the
Where are you?
gym. Oh, Leo, I'm back in the gym. I went to my first boot camp class on Tuesday. I wanted to murder everyone. There was a new instructor in the class, and you're going to be surprised to learn I'm a positive reinforcement kind of gal. So I need you to tell me, like, you're doing so great. You got this. Keep going. And this lady was the opposite. I don't know. I don't know what kind of torture method she was working under, but when I was 3 minutes into the class and already starting to suffer, rather than encouraging me, she was like, "You're suffering already? This is nothing. You have no idea what's in store for you." And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is terrible. So not only was my body not really up to par, but mentally, it was not necessarily the motivation I needed. So I did go on Tuesday. I did go on Thursday as well. Thursday's instructor was better, but oof, I'm back in, but my body is feeling the absence. What about you, Leo? Have you been exercising this week? Keeping you honest?
I hate the tough love trainers. I really hate that. I really do. Like I need a hug. I want the encouragement. And yeah, I think for me it's got to be positive as well, even to the extent, and this is a bit strange, but and they're like, give me 10 reps of something or give me 12 of something. I want them to count up, not down. There's something quite like, when they go like, 12, 11 and you're working. I hate that. I want to see it growing, right? I want to be like, you've done 10, now you're doing your 11th, now you're doing 12. It's really weird, isn't it? I think basically your body's like weak and it's like, it's angry that it's being forced to do this. And so suddenly you get super irrational and easily pissed off. That's where I am in the gym. No, I've not. So lots of running. I keep looking at the weights in my office and thinking I really need to start doing it. And the older I get, the more I'm just completely like my posture's appalling. But I have been running hard, and we we were talking about this when we were WhatsApping. Rather embarrassingly, I ended up running 3 times on Wednesday. It was an accident. It seems like a ludicrous thing to do. I'll admit, it does seem strange, but it was because I've been really enjoying running into our new office, and I get there, and then the guys who the guys at work are like, "Oh, we're lunchtime running, right?" They're all like 10 to 12 years younger than me, and I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't not run. I had to, I was kind of like, I'll show these young whippersnappers how it's done. So I kind of, I felt like I had to run at lunch, and then by the end of the day, I thought, well, it's the quickest way to get home, so I'll run home. So I ran 3 times in one day. So. And now a friend of mine spotted it on Strava and said, you're too old to run 3 times a day. And I explained the situation. He was like, now your legs are in pieces, right? Your ankles are hurting. And I was like, yeah, exactly. I'm suffering. I'm suffering, really, to be honest. So I've course corrected from my croissant eating, and I'm now over exercising. So that's going to crash and burn at some point, right?
It definitely will. What was the distance on each of these occasions, Leo?
Around 6K. So it was an 18K day. At the end of the day, yeah, I'll crash and burn, Sarah. I'll crash and burn hard. Well, it's conference season, right? So it's It's all going to fall apart, isn't it? Which is actually where my SDR highlight segue. Nice, see what I did there? Which is actually where my SDR brain is at the moment. It feels like the industry's in learning mode, which I love. So in Europe, we've got VRWS going on. Last week, I was a bit silly, Sarah, and I said we'll get Antonio in. Clearly, Antonio's still in the midst of delivering the conference, so that was a stupid thing to say. But we'll get him. We'll definitely get him next week to come and tell us how it was. But I think it's such an interesting time in Europe. Clearly, like regulation over tourism, emergence of AI, and I feel like I'm seeing lots of great stuff on LinkedIn about the sessions that are happening, technologies that people can buy and how they can build their businesses. So I'm it's a shame not to be there. We have got a team there, but I'm not part of it this year. And then next week I'm packing my bags off to Phoenix. So I feel like we're at the start of a busy period, right? So I love this time of year for that. So that's where my head's at. What about you, my friend? Where are you? Any highlights for you?
Yeah, I think my highlight is just staying above board, mate. between the reno and trying to keep up with all of the demands as well. I mean, yeah, even though if I'm not going to a conference, there are definitely like follow-ups and things that need to be done and outreach that's happening, especially on LinkedIn, in preparation for those conferences. So I am with the rest of my team in spirit, even if I'm not there physically. So I would agree with you. I think it's a great season for the industry. I love the fall. I think there's some great conferences coming up, and yeah, I'm excited to hear what's new in the industry.
Yeah. So I think what's going to happen is we're going to get lots of learnings in the next couple of weeks, months coming out, and around round table discussions that are going to be happening and panels and things. So yeah, expect some of that stuff to whiz around the tracks soon enough. Where I wanted to start this week, you know me, I'm a good news guy, right? I love telling the positive story, Sarah. I want to tell it before anyone else tells it. And what jumped out to me was a piece from Skift. Challenges. Actually, now I've said this, it feels like I'm sort of jumping on the grave of hotels, which is definitely not what I'm doing. But I guess our SDR's benefit might be the hotel industry's loss. But I don't think that's necessary. It's not as binary as that. But there you go. As I say that, I feel quite embarrassed. I've just said positive piece. Here you go. Challenges for hotels, gains for short-term rentals, demonstrated in 3 charts. If you haven't read this article, I would, and you need a little bit of a pick me up. It's definitely worth reading if you're a short-term rental person or a hospitality person in general. Those of us in the industry have long talked about this, us eating into the hotel category, right? And how it's happening more frequently than ever. And there's a couple of charts here that are being used to indicate it. The first is NPS, which Sarah, I'm sure you use at AirDNA for different things, right?
Yep.
For those that don't know what it is, you probably do. Net Promoter Score. So how likely are you to recommend an experience to somebody who you're close with, or talk positively about an experience? It's a really good way of just getting the feel of what the sentiment is for an experience or a product. So average Net Promoter Scores for short-term rentals are 63 versus hotels, which are 51. So it's a really good indicator that there's more customer loyalty towards the STR segment than the hotel segment. And I think worth lingering on for a second, because we always talk about how we need to do better. I'm the first to throw us under the bus and say we need to do better in terms of offering amenities and services to people. Clearly, you look, the data here is suggesting we're already doing a pretty good job of providing the experience that people want when they're staying in a home as opposed to a hotel. And we'll dig into that a little bit later in the article. But there's some good talking points here in terms of what you should be focused on as a short-term rental operator, and what you can maybe put aside and go, maybe I don't need to offer that so much. I thought I did, but perhaps I don't. So the first one is Net Promoter Score. The second one is a growing preference for short-term rentals. So the preference for vacation rentals, and this is US data, by the way. So for US travelers, has increased from 7% in 2020 to 11% in 2023. And the hotel preference has gone down from 60% to 56% in the same period. So, we're seeing decline in hotel, increase in short-term rental when people are searching, which is really, really, really interesting. And again, you can have a look at the detail there, which is why travelers would choose an STR. And the top ones I think are really interesting. I sent this to you, didn't I? I was geeking out over this a couple of nights ago. Top one is location. And Sarah, we always say this, where STRs are so lean, we can get, there's housing stock and the right licensing or no regulation, we can get in and bring into neighborhoods that need renovation or need a bit of a lift. The second most popular answer there is they're more comfortable for longer stays, price, and the fact that I can cook my own food rather than rely on the hotel's food and beverage options. So I think that is incredibly interesting. One, because it reinforces the view I've had. It's nice when you see the data and go, that is definitely what I think. But it's a bit of optimism in the face of what we've seen in Europe, which is a lot of regulation in European capitals and major cities, even though the housing stock is relatively unaffected by short-term rentals. We're talking a couple of % here or there. I can't remember what the stats are for Barcelona, but we're talking about not a great deal of licenses that are already in existence to bring short-term rental guests into your city. But clearly, there's a desire for short-term rental. So if you're a city planner, you've got to think about having an amount of properties for short-term rental. Otherwise, you're going to get those tourists going elsewhere. Probably in the case of Lisbon, they might go to Porto if you're going to close the door. Yeah, Sarah, what do you think?
I love this kind of research, Leo, and you're right. And in case anybody is wondering, yes, we do geek out over these things on the WhatsApp at night, sat around on our sofas, because that is us. I love these kind of stats because I'm with you. I often share the same type of information, but just assuming that it's my opinion and hoping that it's backed up by fact. And so to have the data is really great to see. I think it also highlights something really, really interesting that I've always believed about short-term rentals, which is they're a different kind of stock to hotels. They're while oftentimes they're looked at, and when somebody's looking for accommodation on many of the major OTAs, they're kind of shown together as options. But for me, the use case that I have for a short-term rental versus a hotel is completely different. So I think the article cites some of the interesting ones. So first, if you're traveling in a group, it's much more comfortable. I think the ability to kind of cook is, in particular, if it's a longer stay, I'm always going to want a short-term rental. And so the location, I think, is always important when you travel. I think that is regardless of whether it's short-term rental versus hotel. In fact, hotels sometimes are in locations that are just kind of gross, like an airport hotel, which that meets a need, but I'm not loving that holiday, for that stay. I think if they were to send out a net promoter score, it would not be great. So, it turns out the rooms are quite noisy and, no, it was not a great view. So for me, this is a really interesting one, because we finally have some data to back up what, I have long since thought, which is that they're not really comparable. They're used for very different scenarios, between a short-term rental and a hotel. I do find it interesting that it seems like there's a shift in overall need for accommodation. And so I wonder if some of that has to do with business travel not being quite what it was with video conferencing. I think particularly post-COVID, people are a lot more comfortable. It used to be if you were trying to close a big deal, you better be on a plane out to Tokyo or wherever the client is, or you're not going to close that deal. And I think a lot of that is changing. And then I think the other component is a digital nomad. So we used to be business travel, which was short trips for a specific purpose, which was more geared towards hotels. That what I would consider still business travel, technically, because somebody who's going there to work, even if not necessarily to have a business meeting in that particular location. So they still need the amenities that are offered oftentimes by a hotel. So things like a desk to work from, high-speed internet, all of these sort of things. But the type of accommodation that they need and desire is very different because the length of stay is much longer. And so I think it's an interesting trend that I am curious to keep an eye on. I'm also curious how, particularly in Europe, governments are going to respond to the shift in demand. Because if all of a sudden there's all these licenses for hotels and there's all these hotel rooms, but nobody wants to stay in a hotel, I'm curious how that's going to impact tourism overall. And I would agree with you. I mean, I mentioned earlier the stat of Barcelona, like the short-term rentals for the licenses. Currently 10,000 licenses. That's less than 1% of the overall housing stock in the city. Um, and so, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to transform that. And maybe it's the apart hotel is the way to go. But in my mind, that is not the magic of a short-term rental. We talked about this. It's not, they're not unique. They're more cookie cutter. And so I don't know. I'm curious to see how the shift in demand is actually going to impact overall regulation and the landscape of tourism and hospitality in general.
I think it's inevitable that the cookie cutter, I can never say that. Cookie cutter. There you go. Thank you. Um, uh, Sort of service department, apart hotel, whatever you want to call it, model will definitely play a role. The hotel industry, in fact, stands to benefit well from that. If they've already built the hotels, they can convert them into apart hotels as well. We know Marriott have done the deal with Sonder. It's a big reason for why they've done it. We know people like Bob W have raised a lot of money recently on that type of plan. Office space being converted into either accommodation, STR accommodation, service departments, or hotels. There's definitely, I like your point about business travel because it's where my head was at. I was like, where are these hotel guests going? Because I'd imagine
Mm.
really digging further to the data, you're going to find resort hotels probably doing as well as they did. It's maybe urban hotels for that more transient, quick in and out journey that maybe has slightly been replaced by video calls. It's rare. It's not unheard of. Probably once a year, I'll travel to the US to see clients. But 3 other times in the year, I'm traveling just for conferences. And then I'm staying in the hotel because I want to be right next to the conference venue 3 or 4 days. I know Damien has a different opinion on it. He still likes to stay SDR. I know you've had some fabulous SDR experience with your colleagues where you all shared one room.
Yeah.
Sounds dreadful.
In Paris.
Yeah,
As well.
still scarred by that one, Sarah. I can't get over that one. Just no.
So bad.
So for that, for the hotel is still the obvious choice. Everyone's got separate rooms, separate bathrooms, and it makes more sense. But I think you are right. I think those let's fly into town and do this deal quickly. Maybe that more likely happens on video call, and then business travel might be regular, frequent visits, or someone who works 4 days a week and flies home at the weekend. And I think they are looking to feel at home. So certainly in the way we should be styling our properties, we need to be acknowledging that, showing photos that show areas where you can work. And also, I was chatting to, someone I know in the industry who says, look, don't try and think about different segments of customers. So, your weekday price needs to be really competitive because it's for someone who is working away. And then your weekend price can be a bit more luxurious because it's for people coming for a nice weekend away. So it's making sure that it's the revenue management piece that I think people in the space are getting so much better at. The revenue management piece is getting much more sophisticated, and that's helping because then when people are searching, or maybe their company gives them a budget and say, well, you can work away, that's where they can see, oh, there's a really good deal to be had because I just want this Monday through Thursday. So they're really flooring the price versus week-long rates. I also think that the trend is probably set to continue because I don't see us going back to. I really don't see us going. I know we're not going to have the office debate because I'm hearing some people thinking we are going to go back to offices, but I don't think we're going to go back to spending money on the flights and the accommodation unnecessarily, right? If a video call will do, then everyone's going to look and go, well, that's a fraction of the price, like a tiny fraction of the price of doing that face to face. Doesn't mean face to face is replaced. It just means it's less often. And as you said, so yeah, definitely want to watch. Sarah, I think we've done that one. Sarah, what have you been looking at this week?
I've got some more good news, Leo. We're just the good news gang this week. Finally. Finally, we've got something decent to share to keep the troops motivated. Awesome. So my article this week is an article from The Economist. So digital nomads are a force for good in Latin America. And yes, dear listeners, I do realize that this is Good Morning Hospitality Europe, but given all of the conversations that we have had historically about regulation and digital nomads and how that's impacting, I found this article to be particularly interesting, and I think there are implications outside of Latin America, obviously, for this. So let's talk about the article in general. I think we're all pretty aware digital nomads are essentially workers who have the option to work remotely and not necessarily go to an office. And so they take off for oftentimes months at a time and explore a new location and have a combo of sort of work and play. Top destinations historically have included Asia and Europe, but Latin America is seeing a big resurgence. So in 2023, Mexico City was the seventh most popular city for digital nomads, which took me by surprise. And in 2022, there were 263 nomads for every 100,000 inhabitants in the city of Medellín in Colombia, which is more than any other Spanish speaking country. So definitely on the rise. There are now over 20 countries in the Americas that offer digital nomad friendly visas. So these are visas that allow shorter stay permits. They often exempt the user from paying taxes, but they often require a minimum um, income or salary proof, as well as private health care, so that they're not a burden on the system. So not paying tax, but not receiving any taxpayer benefits either. Um, of course, as always, locals turns out not convinced if this is a positive thing or not. So oftentimes, the things that are cited are that newcomers are adding additional pressure on the overburdened housing market. So let's have a look at this. Is this actually true? Well, according to the article, no is the short of it. Let's get into some of the details. So rent rises are largely due to other factors. So in particular, in Medellin, the Economist is stating that there is a need for 14,500 new homes this year, but only 2,000 are being built. So this is a massive gap, and this is just for the overall population, not taking the nomads into account. And the article also cites that the link between short term rentals and the housing market or housing crisis is usually overblown. So, Airbnb stock in Mexico City takes up just 3% of the capital's total rental housing. So, while slightly more than Barcelona, it's still a really insignificant portion. And new construction permits are down by 2/3 in the last 4 years in Mexico City. So nobody is really rising to the occasion to kind of fill that gap. The other two interesting things for me cited by the article are, of course, the knock on effects of having these immigrants and digital nomads. And so, one that we talk about often is, hey, they're building local businesses. They're going to clothing shops. They're going to the local fruit shop. They're going to the to the meat shop. And this article was interesting to me because it actually has some data to back that up. So, in the case of Medellin, for example, digital nomads spend an average of $1,400 per month, compared with $575 a month for a local. So think of all of that additional sort of revenue that's coming into the city. And in Mexico City, in 2021, cited in the article, there were $532 million was injected into the economy by nomads. I think the other one that I had never thought about, quite frankly, Leo, and I'll kind of end with this and then get some of your thoughts, was that the immigrants coming in tend to be highly skilled workers. And so the additional knock on impact is economical, but sort of by way of interacting with the digital nomads. So, and oftentimes there are collaborations between local businesses and these digital nomads, whether that be through meetup groups or other ways of connecting. And so, oftentimes that ends up raising not only the skill level, but also the rates that local businesses are able to charge for their services. And so it kind of elevates the entire industry, in particular in tech, right, which is the sort of the main industry that a lot of these nomads work in. So that was one that I found was new, innovative, and that I was not expecting. And it's once again nice to see that our opinions are backed up by data. And if this is happening in Latin America, then I think definitely there are implications for this across Europe, and so something that we can take away and look into at maybe some of the additional positive knock on effects of not only tourism but digital nomads in general, and kind of how they play into the short term rental economy. So I don't know. What do you think, Leo?
We are just so keen to be validated today, aren't we? Look at like all our previous previous discussions, we're saying, look, we're right. We never point to the bits where we're wrong, do we? And I hope we never do. Just wouldn't be right,
Unnecessary.
would it? Wouldn't be right. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the parallels between Europe and Latin America here are huge, right? Like we have this old Europe versus new, more upwardly mobile population traveling around. I've said it before on the pod, within Europe as well, that's people just from different parts of the European Union. And I do believe that the rising tide lifts all ships, right? So if you've got nomads that are starting businesses, the broad-based benefit of that is huge, not just the services they're accessing, but as you say, the other businesses they're interacting with. You need a designer, you need a freelancer, you need someone to print some t-shirts for you. I say that because I've been doing that this morning. There's all these different businesses around that rise. And there's this amazing cross-pollination of ideas and people, which makes places genuinely really exciting to live in. Why do you live in Barcelona, Sarah? Why do I live in London? It's because we want to live in exciting places. And that's the other thing. Get young people in, and they're most likely going to start accessing your schools, paying taxes, using services later in life that they're not using right now. So right now, they might look a little bit far away as digital nomad, but they will soon come in as soon as they meet someone and they fall in love and they have kids and they do all those things. So it really is. I think it only benefits you from being outward looking. And obviously, we as an industry encourage that, right? And I think we're seeing, obviously, Airbnb does very well pulling in the parts of the digital nomad crowd. But we've talked before about how there are businesses coming into the space specifically targeting that with the type of accommodation they're choosing. I've got a company, Bandy, which is set up in the UK, and they're taking a more swap approach. So if you're a digital nomad sat in London, you can swap your room or your whole apartment with someone based in Rio. And it's more about the idea that it's younger people who might only have a room within a shared house, doesn't even need to be a whole house. And it's this idea that people do just want to get moving around. And that trend is here to stay. You can't reverse out of that. You kind of want to encourage them to come to your city. And it's the same principle as we always say. So I think that is a really big segment to watch within our industry, is like who gets the digital nomads right. Like Airbnb will obviously hoover up a lot of them for now, but there will be more specified niche OTAs that work. And I think it's about finding the right accommodation mix, the right community, and then going from there. So again, as you said, it's another segment for us to watch, and proof again that it'll always be a political football because it's outsiders coming in. And as old as human history is, whether people come in who are from a lower socioeconomic background or a higher socioeconomic background, they generally cause a stir from a certain portion of the people who don't want outsiders to come to a place. That's always going to be the case. But let's have a real conversation about what we're talking about. We're saying that Airbnb is typically a couple of % of the housing stock overall in these cities. And then an even smaller subset of that is the digital nomads. And I think it's just common sense to say, of course, they're going to bring more benefit than they bring problems, as long as you get the ratio right. And that's the really important bit, is I don't think we're anywhere near problematic ratios, but clearly if we ever were, you just need to make sure you're tracking and being broad-based about how you approach your solutions. One more point on that is, Sarah, why not at a city level or a state level agree what you want your overall percentage of housing stock to be in the short-term rental market? And every time you build buildings, just make sure that you're not allowed more than 2 or 3% of them is not allowed to become short-term rentals, and just be a bit more practical, like that. Moan over, because we're telling a good news story today. I think that is don't let me turn it into a negative. That is very good news. And I think as someone two people who live in very international cities, we know that because we see evidence of that all around us, that like international people bring great skills, great cultural mix and education. It's a phenomenal thing.
Absolutely. Well, we're the good news bears today. It's nice.
Wow. Okay, let's go really negative next week. Over tourism, regular. Let's go. No, I'm joking. Of course we won't do that. I always love this is my favorite part of the week, Sarah. Obviously, I love catching up with you. So what else have you got going on the rest of the week, my friend?
Oh goodness. I don't know, Leo. Honestly, my brain is spent. My mind is still on this Reno, so that is, I think, my focus between just normal work. Like outside of that, is trying to decide on the contract to get moving as quickly as possible. If I want to have the deadline of the end of the year and try and stick to that, it is crunch time. What about you?
Fingers crossed for you, my friend. I hope that all goes well. It's my daughter's 3rd birthday party at the weekend.
Oh,
Um,
cute.
I know, right? Which is why I haven't gone to VRWS. Shout out to Antonio. Although I've just seen that next year you've moved it away from my daughter's birthday, and it's going to be in Rome. So thank you, my friend. I'm sure that was just to get me back. I'm sure of it. No, so we've got my daughter's 3rd birthday, and she's having a Frozen party with her friends. So I guess I'll be dressed as a snowman or some. I'll send you pictures. You can have a good laugh at that. But we're talking 20, 23-year-olds and a lot of parents and no alcohol. So it sounds like it could be quite a tough afternoon.
Oh, I think you need a princess outfit. Just saying. Snowman, not gonna cut it.
All right, pic's coming. I'll do it, and I'll send you a pic.
Yeah.
Alrighty. To everyone back home, everyone at home. Sorry, everyone back home. Everyone at home. I hope you've enjoyed today's show. If you have, please hit like, share, subscribe in all the usual social places. And if there's anything on the show that you want us to be talking about, then send us an email. Reach out to us. We want to hear from you. Until next time, thank you very much.
Want to stop juggling spreadsheets, calendars, and a dozen apps just to run your rentals? Lodgify makes it easy. It's an all-in-one toolkit for hosts. Build a direct booking website, automate guest messaging, and keep all your channels in sync. Running your rental business your way has never been simpler. And for Good Morning Hospitality listeners, you can get 20% off any yearly plan with code GMH20. Just check the link in the show notes to get started today.